And good morning everyone, welcome back to another video here in the off-grid garage. It's 10:30, so we can almost say good after morning. And guys, look at this. Look at this weather again. I know most of my viewers are sitting in deep snow at the moment. Snowed in parts of Europe and America. Blizzards, snowstorms, and here we've got pure sunshine. 31 degrees already, pure solar weather. What better can we do than, well, keep building on our battery, right? Well, I need to tell you something. I haven't made a video for a while now. The last one is about 3-4 days ago or something, and I haven't published anything. Well, I've filmed a lot actually, but I haven't published it. I don't know. It's a bit of a long story, but you know, you remember when we discharged the battery and one of the battery cells was so low at 2.5 volts and actually triggered the BMS to turn off. And a lot of people have cried, yeah, well, you need to fully charge and do a full capacity test and blah, 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 whatever. So I actually charged the battery since then with my solar. And I did a lot of changes to the settings of the charge controller as well. I did a lot of reading on the forums and tried different things. And then one of the battery cells, number 11, was peaking at 3.5, 3.6 volts. And I was trying to push it down again. And I discharged the battery with my light bulbs, just this one cell, to keep it under the level, basically, yeah, because the BMS was trying to balance it, of course, but the balance current is only 0.2 amps. And if you charge the battery with 5 or 10 amps and you discharge with 0.2 amps at the same time, this is no good. There's no effect, there's no result, it won't pull the battery down. The balancing of the BMS will only work if there's no current going into the battery from solar or a charger or something. But the solar charge controller kept pushing into the battery because it could see only the overall voltage of the battery, of course, and said, well, there's still space, you know, you need more charge. And it kept charging and everything. And then a second cell peaked up at 3.4, 3.5 volts. And I tried to discharge this at the same time. So I had to swap over the light bulbs from 11 to number 6 and back and forward. And then a third one came and I said, well, this is all too much. This is all not working at all. Some of the cells were peaking far higher than others. And there was a total imbalance, obviously, in this battery pack. So, well, eventually I turned off the solar charge controller and turned off the load and had a look at the battery. And I said, well, there's no other way than pulling all these battery cells out of the pack again, put them on my workbench in parallel and top balance them. Well, guys, I didn't do it. I didn't do that. The battery is still, there we go. Still the original build battery, nothing has changed. I haven't taken anything out. But I managed to balance the batteries. So I did some Googling again and found some other videos from professional battery builders, professional YouTubers and everything. Well, I'm a professional battery builder. I have built one. It's not working quite well, but I built one. So what they were saying is there's another method to actually balance the battery, and you need just to inject power into one cell to bring this up to level, and then you measure the next cell and either charge it or discharge it to make them all equal. It seemed to be a very daunting process because I've got 16 battery cells and they showed this only with 4 or 8 battery cells to explain the actual procedure. But I did the same with 16 battery cells over the last 3 days basically. So I turned off the charger, turned off the load, just had a look at the battery and balanced them all up. So what I did, I have got 2 DC to DC buck converters here, DC to DC chargers or converters. And I set one to 3.55 volt and the other one is on 6 or 7 volt. So I used this one to push as many amps into the battery cell as possible and measured the voltage of the battery cell at the same time and had a look at the BMS to just fill up the battery as quickly as possible. And then when it reached 3.5 volts, I swapped it over to this one and let the battery saturate, absorb. And I think this is one of the main things people don't understand with these lithium iron phosphate batteries. They need to absorb the energy as well. Now, when you have your current, you're charging with constant current to some point, and the voltage of your battery is rising and slowly coming to a point, and then at this point here you charge with constant voltage. So you keep the voltage, as in my case, at 3.55 volts. It's a constant. Where's my blue pen? Here. Yeah, it's a constant voltage. So this is constant voltage, and before that we have red one, constant current. So you can see the current stays constant and the voltage is rising. Well, this is supposed to be blue, and the voltage is rising like this. And at some point, when you keep the voltage constant, your current will taper off like this. So it will go down and finally hit zero when the battery is fully charged. But you can see we've got here 3.55 volts, as in my case, and we've got here 3.5, that's a 5, 3.55 volt as well. The voltage of the cell has not changed, but look at all this absorption. We have a line down here. All this area here, yeah, this is all energy which is going into the battery until it finally hits the absorption cutoff voltage here of 1/10 of a C or something whenever you stop charging. But if you just measure the voltage, 3.55, 3.55. Voltage gives you a rough indication, but it doesn't tell the truth. You also need to look at the current. It took me a while to understand this as well, and this is a little bit different to other batteries, because we're always talking about voltages, you know, but this is only half of the truth. You need to look at the current as well, and this is exactly what I did here with this setup. Then I set this one to 3.55 volt to charge the battery and let it sit until I could see the actual amps going from 6, 7, 8 amps going down to under 1 amp. And then I said, okay, we have reached now a point very low down here somewhere, and this is my turn off point of my charging process for this cell. And I did this with all the cells, basically one after another. Injected high amps at the beginning and then later on, and then I set this to constant voltage of 3.55. So constant current, constant voltage. And because this voltage curve here runs so flat, this is actually not correct. It should be more like this. You know, it runs so flat, more like this. You have a quick rise at the beginning, and then it tapers off and is almost constant voltage already from the beginning. And the voltage is only rising very, very slowly here until a point where you switch to constant voltage then. But just looking at the voltage is just not enough with these cells. It's the easiest way to measure, and it gives you a rough indication what's going on. And even I failed with everything I did in the last three nights. Looking back at all this chaos I had here in the garage, I filmed this all. If you want to, I can Frankenstein something together and put a video up, but it will be, well, it will be embarrassing for me at least. But I learned such a lot from these last 3 nights when I spent hours and hours here in the garage and injected energy into single cells and then discharged other cells again because they were peaking out. So looking back to these 3 nights now, it was really exciting and interesting to see the behavior of these cells, and I learned so much from that. Well, anyway, last night I could finally finish all the battery cells now and charge them to 3.55 volts. It took me about 2 days to do all this because some of the cells, they took like 2.5 hours on constant current, so they took 20 amps for 2 hours. So they were 40 ampere hours short, while other cells, they had only half an hour until they reached the constant voltage of 3.55 volt. there was such a huge difference between all these cells, and I still don't know why, because I top balanced them all before for several days before I built this battery bank. But something must have happened in between with the BMS when I tested or everything, or I don't know, but there was a big, call it unbalance across all these cells, you know. But I hope I have managed to get this all right now. So last night, I need to show you here as well. Here. There's also a new app now for the XiaoXiang, whatever you call it. It has the dashboard now modified, so it shows you the dashboard with all the important stuff here, and also the battery cells right underneath, so you don't need to switch back and forward all the time anymore. It's all on one screen now. Very good. The link is down below and on my website as well. This is the newest version. This is the newest version 3.1.1026. Release number 4 it is. I had the release number 3 of an earlier version. This one looks now very pretty. So I had all the battery cells above 3.5 volts, and more importantly, they were all saturated, absorbed. They absorbed all the energy before. So I didn't turn off at this point here when they reached 3.55 volts. Now I turned off at this point here when they actually absorbed all the energy and the current went down as well. So voltage and current observed for each cell. And then I turned on the balancing of the BMS and said, well, let the BMS push them down to exactly the same level now and see how long this will take. And I set the balance voltage to 3.4 volts. And remember, they were all above 3.5 volts. So a 0.1 volt of a 280 amp battery with a discharge current of 0.2 amps only. Well, to be honest, 0.2 amps was one of the reasons I bought this BMS, because this was one of the highest balance currents BMSs you could get. If you look at Delhi or any other BMSs, they discharge only with 20 milliamps. This is 1/10 of what this one can do. So this was one of the reasons, not the main reason, but one of the reasons I said, that's a benefit. A higher discharge current during balancing makes sense with these large cells, right? So anyway, and we have a look this morning and can see 3.3 to 5 to 6 to 4 to 7. So they are all under 3.4 now, of course, because I have also turned on the inverter last night again. It was on 100% last night. It is now on 98%. And we have discharged 6.6 ampere hours overnight by pulling about 20-25 watts from the battery here. So half an amp, I would say. So the battery has been discharged with half an amp overnight from the standby of the inverter and some very little load. Charge the camera. Everything, guys, everything you watch here on the channel is 100% renewable videos. So it took the BMS around 4 hours last night to discharge from 3.5 something to 3.4 for all the battery cells. And I wanted to see how much power does actually the inverter use overnight as a standby power, because I'm still not 100% sure what my best settings are for the solar charge controller. So at the moment I've got this to 3.4 volt per cell and the float is on 3.375, so just quite underneath this 3.4. So overall the charge controller should charge to 54.4. And it tried to do this before, but it couldn't. But it wasn't successful with that because some of the cells were peaking out of this 3.5 volt already. So I have to push them down using my light bulbs and everything to discharge these cells. And then there were more and more cells peaking up the fuller the battery bank got. And there was the moment when I turned everything off and said, no, that's too much now, that's too much. It's not working. So, and now, as we can see here, even after balancing the battery, so fully saturating all the cells and balancing them and have only a 0.5 amp load on the battery, we can see we've got different voltages again here. So we've got a voltage difference from only 6 millivolts. So this is pretty balanced for a 16S battery bank this size, I would say. And what I want to do is now turn on the solar charge controller again. It wasn't turned on for the last 3 days, so I missed out a lot of energy, of course, but that's fine. It is already connected, everything, but I have turned off the charging function inside the solar charge controller. So it's sitting on maintenance mode at the moment. And what I haven't told you yet is I used all my crocodile alligator clips here to discharge and charge the battery with 20 amps, and I had my light bulb set up here as well, and they can pull as much as 60 amps. It's a 4mm cable, so even this cable got a little bit warm here, but I had these ones. They are only 1.5mm or even thinner here, and well, look at this, a nice burn mark on my finger here. They got so hot. So I ended up making my own battery cables here with some with some really strong clamps. I still had here battery clamps and a 4mm cable, and I had this all connected then, and this was fine. So it took me all a long time to get these balance leads and these test cables ready and connect this all and figure out how I want to do this, and a lot of testing, you know. Yeah, well, guys. But I hope the battery is now balanced, saturated. They are all on the same level. I can imagine how many comments I get. Oh, you should have used a balancer. I have told you before. Yes, many people told me before, but I am a believer. I think with a new battery pack, you shouldn't need to use a balancer. They should be all the same or almost the same. There should be not much difference between all these battery cells, you know. A balancer is fine, but you know, it balances the good battery cells with the bad battery cells, and you never will find out if you have bad battery cells because they always get balanced. So it's very hard to identify any issues with a balancer because they all look the same, right? So, and what I would like to do is now, since we have discharged the battery with 6.6 ampere hours at the moment, I will turn off my load now completely here. So we just turn this one off altogether. So there's no amps going in and out anymore, zero, there's nothing. And we turn on the solar charge controller charge function again. And I want to see if the battery as a whole comes back up again to the set 3.4 volts. But I don't want to have any load on this battery at the same time, which messes around, you know. Well, when I did the last test the last couple of days and everything, and had the charge controller and the inverter still running with a pump, and everything was still connected, and it was a big mess. Energy in and out, and it was discharging and charging all the time. We had heaps of clouds outside as well. And this messed up everything as well, because the charging current was not even close to constant. It was sometimes there, and the battery got charged with 150 watts only, and then the clouds went away, the sun came out, and then it smashed into the battery with 1.5 kilowatts, you know. And then you've got 26 amps of charging power, and you're trying to discharge a cell with 0.2 amps, you know. And you could imagine how this battery spiked straight away, you know. This was all insane. All right, see, it says charger disabled. Charger should be disabled during maintenance tasks only, and that's exactly what we did. So enable charger, that's what we do. And we will see we've got solar input already, and we should see this ramping up, because remember, maximum I've set is 54.4, which is 3.4, and we are on 53, so we are on bulk. That is all good. And I can show you from the history here, the last 2 days was nothing. And before that, look at this maximum power there, 1,584 watts. And this is from a 1.2, yeah, it's 1.22 kilowatts. And we're getting almost 1.6 kilowatts out of it, due to the weather with the clouds. Insane. And these are almost 10-year-old solar panels, used ones I picked up for free. A free generator, you know, and delivering 1.6 kilowatts. Like it. Okay, status. Okay, so we are now charging with 18.8 amps. Okay, let's go back into our BMS and see what our battery cells do. So now we've got one red one and one gray one, and this shows us the highest and the lowest cell. It is not like it is showing us an alarm or something, an alert or something. This is only to highlight the highest and the lowest cell. As long as we are staying under 3.5 volts, I would say there's no issue. And we can see we are getting 18.5 amps here into the battery as well. That's what the BMS shows. Yeah, I think it only highlights sometimes when there is a big difference. Okay, now we've got clouds again, have we? 708, yeah, coming back. 1000 watts almost. And there we go again. Number 14 is the highest one. Hey, we had no clouds this morning. What is going on now here? There's a tiny cloud exactly in front of the sun. Can you imagine that? And this makes a big difference in current already. Hey, when there's a blue sky everywhere. But I'm always getting the clouds when I do a testing or something here, when I need full sunshine and constant current. No, not for me. So, and now you can see they're all coming up. 3.37, 65, 70, 59. This one is a bit lower for some reason. 60 catching up now. And this one is 82. 60, see the gray one is changing. And this is exactly what I did the last 3 days here in the garage. I was watching the BMS as well as the shunt and the solar charge controller. Insane. So now the first battery cell has hit 3.4 volt and the balancing has kicked in for this cell. You can see the little B flashing here. But as I said before, it doesn't make any difference at all because we are charging the battery with 18 amps at the moment, this battery cell or all the battery cells. And we are discharging with 0.2 amps at the same time. So this is not going to work. So the balancing won't work until the charging has stopped. And this should exactly happen at 14.4 volts when we hit the absorption phase. This is the constant current voltage here. So let's see what happens now. Yeah, well guys, and looking at these numbers, I think 3.4 volt per cell is still far too high to charge the battery to. This is like 99.99% anyway. So there's no real benefit to charge them over 3.35, I think. This should be your maximum charging voltage and then let them absorb the energy. So 3.35 maybe here, and then do a 2-hour absorption time and let them suck in all the energy. Well, that's what I think at the moment, because looking at these numbers here, there's no real benefit to charge them to 3.4 volts. So now we've got 3 battery cells over 3.4 volts and they're all catching up slowly. And this one here is still our highest with 3.416. You can see there's the discharge is not doing anything. We are still charging with 19 amps now. So all the batteries are getting charged with 19 amps. But let's see, we are at 54.4 and we should see the charge controller going to absorption just in a second. I just swapped into the app and it's already at absorption now. So this means it will keep the 54.4 volts, which I have set the charge controller to, which should be in theory 3.4 volt. But from now on, we will see the amps going down. This is exactly the ramp we are seeing. This is the point where we are at now. And now the amps are going down because we don't increase the voltage anymore. So yeah, it's already going down. See, 18.10, 18, 17. It's already going down. Perfect. And this is exactly what we see now. This is this part here. And now I'm not 100% sure if I have set this correctly, but I've set the absorption time to 2 hours at the moment. So I give it a time of 2 hours to reach this point. So from here to there, this can take 2 hours, or if the current goes under 1 amp, I have set. Probably too low as well, but if it takes longer than 2 hours, it goes into float mode, turns off the charging altogether. Or if it goes under 1 amp, I just assume all the batteries have saturated and we have reached this point here, and I turn off charging. 16.7. Goes down quickly. And more battery cells are getting balanced now because they reach the 3.4 volt. So this all seems to work now just fine here. But some of the battery cells are still under 3.4. Well, it still charges here. Now it charges the cell, it charges all the cells now, and some of them gets discharged at the same time. So it makes them all the same. We've got a difference of 20 millivolt at the moment. All right, and now after another 10 minutes or so, you can see the current has tapered off to 3.7 amps already. So this didn't take long. So we are somewhere over here, I would say, at the moment. So the current has gone down from 20 amps all the way down to a 3.8. And some of the cells have still not catched up here. Number 6, for example, again, number 6, 3.393. There's still 7 millivolt missing. And all the other ones are at 3.4 or shortly over and getting balanced at the moment. Yeah, this is our lowest cell we have here again, number 6. There was the one which was causing the low voltage disconnect the last time. So number 6 is very suspicious. Yeah, here are the settings in the solar charge controller. Absorption time 2 hours. So this is the time I give the charge controller to reach this point, 2 hours. Or if the current goes below 2 amps, I have set at the moment. So if this goes below 2 amps and we are at 2.5, 2.6 amps at the moment, then it stops charging altogether and goes into float mode. And float mode is 54. So it will wait until the battery reaches the 54 volt. And if it goes 10 millivolt under this 54, it will recontinue. It will start a new cycle with bulk, absorption and float. But in between these two figures, there's nothing happening from solar. Solar will be totally off. And this is what I'm trying to minimize. Because if I turn on the load now, the load will be purely being supplied by the battery. Even we have pure sunshine outside and I could harvest 1000 watts from solar, solar will not work until we reach the 54 volts again. Which shouldn't be too far off, because the voltage drop will be very quickly here, because we are already in this, well, if you have this voltage curve here, it goes something like this. And we are already here at 3.4 volts. So this is on the steep curve of the battery cell voltage. And if we just discharge a little bit, the voltage drops quite like a rock. And this is exactly what I was struggling with the last couple of weeks, actually, since I put this all together here and had it as a temporary setup here on the workbench with the charge controller and the inverter and everything. Nobody can give you a specific answer how to set up your charge controller, what settings are the best. For example, what should you set it to? They all give you a rough advice, but you know, it all, as many people say, it all depends on your circumstances, all depends on your battery, what kind of chemistry you're using, what kind of solar you have, what kind of load you have. This is all very individual stuff, and it's very, very hard to say, well, you need to set this to 3.4 volt or 54.4 volts altogether for absorption, and then have a 2-hour absorption time, and this is the right setting. Well, it's not. I'm not sure if this works for me, or we just have the charge controller going into float mode, and this should actually stop our charging altogether. Yes, it does. 0 amps going into the battery now. And now we can see the actual balancing takes effect, because we are not charging the battery anymore. There's nothing going into the battery, but we are slowly taking out power through our balancing process now. And this should drop all the batteries now to a 3.4 volts or whatever they are. 17 millivolt difference. This was probably one of the expectations I had. I said, well, if I have a Victron charge controller, I can just look up settings, put them in, and it works. And it didn't. And this was quite frustrating. You can see my cheat sheet here, where I have different settings set up and trying different things, and none of them quite worked, and battery cells were peaking, and this was all very difficult to understand and get my head around. Even I worked with charge controllers and different battery chemistries for the last 20 years. But this is all different now. This is all different. This flat curve of the cells here makes you just go away from looking at the voltage. There's so much more to the whole story of these battery cells, of this chemistry. And I'm super happy to learn all this now, to experiment here on the workbench before I put this all together in a productive environment here. As I said in one of my videos, this will be production. Everything which goes in there will stay in there for a long time, hopefully. This is all tested and confirmed and working. But this one here is testing bench. And you can see everything is still here in the test area. Okay guys, just in case you have wondered where I have been in the last couple of days, well, here in the off-grid garage doing more testing and trying to get my head around how this all works together. You're reading a lot, it's all confusing. I can totally understand this. And as I said before, you are not alone out there having these issues. I'm facing the same problems at the moment here as well. And you need to get your head around, you need to understand how this all works together. And I'm in the very fortunate position to have all this set up here with the workbench and can leave this all as it is and just close the garage door in the middle of the night, you know, frustrated, go to bed and have bad dreams about it and think about the whole situation and said, well, it's not worth doing it really. It's so much to think about and things you don't yet understand. But now slowly, really, I understand how this all works with absorption and to observe the voltage and the current at the same time to make an assumption how full your battery is and at what state of charge you are in. Well, before I did this all pure voltage based, which is totally not working with this chemistry. Well, guys, don't be frustrated as I am sometimes. Keep your chin up, keep moving, keep learning, do some testing. So it's really advisable probably if you start with a smaller system as I wanted to do at the beginning, you know, 4 battery cells, 12-volt system, and then learn from there. Well, I ended up with a 48-volt professional high-power battery bank now. Probably not the best to do at the beginning, really. But you know, that's why we are here on the channel. You can learn from my mistakes, from my findings, from my learnings as well. And hopefully you get your system set up correctly and know what to do and not to do. Well, so far I haven't destroyed anything, which is good. And as always, guys, thank you so much for all your comments and all your support here on the channel. I really appreciate everything. And I guess we shall see us again in the next video very soon, where we do, where we keep working on this side a little bit more. I hope the inverter comes the next week. I already have sold this one here to one of my viewers. I had 4, 5, 6 inquiries and this inverter will go as soon as the other one arrives here. So thank you to everyone for getting in contact with me. I wasn't expecting that so many people are building 48-volt battery systems here in Australia, really. Alright guys, thanks again, and well, we shall see us again in the next video coming out very soon, right? Okay, stay charged, stay safe, stay warm. I go in the pool now. And thanks again for everything. Bye-bye.